Good evening. You're watching The Big Story with Haryanto Duman. I'm Olivia Quay. Ahead on the show, we speak to a lawyer on the legalities of the circuit breaker measures under the COVID-19 Temporary Measures Act.
But first, the Elections Department said today that Singapore's revised voter rolls have been certified and are now open for public inspection. There are a total of 2.65 million electors. Eligible voters can check their particulars in the registers of electors electronically through the Elections Department website and the SingPass mobile app.
Also in the headlines, the number of COVID-19 cases in Singapore has passed 3,000 with 334 new cases confirmed yesterday. The current total now stands at 3,252. A 10th person has also died from complications due to the virus.
Meanwhile, the multi-ministry task force said yesterday that it's now mandatory for everyone to wear a mask when they're outside the home as part of stricter measures to slow the virus spread. Those who don't risk a $300 fine for first-time offenders.
There are exceptions, though. People may remove their masks when engaging in strenuous exercise like running or jogging. Children under the age of 2 don't have to wear masks as well. National Development Minister Lawrence Wong said making mask wearing compulsory does not give people the green light to go out unnecessarily.
The Straits Times Hong Kong correspondent Claire Huang joins us now because both Singapore and Hong Kong have been praised globally in their handling of the crisis. But while the number of confirmed cases in Hong Kong has slowed to single digits, Singapore is seeing triple-digit figures in new cases. Compared to Singapore's total count of 3,252 cases as of Tuesday, Hong Kong has just over 1,000 cases. Claire, what are the main differences in what the Hong Kong and Singapore authorities have done to manage the outbreak?
They have done pretty much the same thing. They were incremental on both sides, particularly on social distancing measures. But Singapore had a slight head start in terms of border control. It turned away visitors earlier, while in Hong Kong, the healthcare staff went on strike to force full border closure, which didn't happen. But by February, 10 out of 13 borders and crossings were shut. That said, Hong Kong was very decisive in shutting schools, and that was already done, after the Chinese New Year holidays. So it was extended until now. And today, the government said that the university entrance exams would go ahead next week as planned if there is no escalation in the situation.
While the actual interventions in place are indeed important, it's also about how serious people are taking these measures. Now, Claire, you wrote a story about how the scars of SARS have contributed to the Hong Kong public voluntarily changing their behavior. Tell us more.
So like Taiwan, right, Hong Kong people remember SARS very well. They had 300 people who died in the pandemic. And so, when this started, when news of this virus, broke out, remember the face mask rush that was in January, February. That was very early. The people here are very quick to react. Because of the memories of SARS. And also, a lot of the Singaporeans I know here say they wear a mask because it's now social etiquette in Hong Kong. And it's also done to, for a peace of mind, right? Because nobody knows whether they are a super spreader, things like that. So they do it. So people do it here quite voluntarily and very willingly. And they know that they do it because, you want an added layer of protection.
Yeah. Now, Claire, on the topic of masks, wearing masks when you're out was just made mandatory in Singapore. Conversely, because of the ban on face masks triggered by the months-long pro-democracy protests, people in Hong Kong had to fight to be allowed to wear masks. How did that play out? Did it take long for the government to rescind the ban in light of the COVID-19 outbreak?
So the face mask ban came about last October because of the unrest. Last week, the Hong Kong Court of Appeal ruled that a ban on face masks at authorized public assemblies was unconstitutional. Okay, but it also found that such a ban at unauthorized protests does not contravene the basic law. So the Pan Democrats are now disappointed, and they say that they will bring the matter to the Court of Final Appeal. So watch this space.
Well, Claire, what's the situation currently in Hong Kong? What have been the key factors in keeping the case numbers lower than in Singapore, especially when it comes to new daily cases?
So Hong Kong's tally stands at 1,016, including 4 deaths, and more than 450 people have been discharged. The daily numbers have been at single digits, and I think they hit a low of 3. So I think this is uh, besides the memories of SARS, which has made them more vigilant. Hong Kong has also very strong grassroots. So a lot of the initiatives, things like handing out masks to the needy, to the cleaners, are ground up. You
Hmm.
don't have to wait for the government to do anything. So these people
Right.
come out, they source for the masks, they source for sanitizers, and you see them giving these things out to people who need them. And you have that here because people don't really trust the government to help them.
Right.
Trust in government basically is at an all-time low. So, they do it themselves. It's quite the opposite in Singapore, right? Where I was told that, people think that because it's Singapore, healthcare services are reliable and good, so you have a safety net. But the problem comes when everybody starts thinking this way. Over in Hong Kong, I think that the lack of trust actually in the government is a key factor. And so, people volunteer and they rally together on their own.
Right.
Hmm. Well, thank you very much for your time, Claire. That was indeed very insightful. Stay safe as well. That was our Hong Kong correspondent, Claire Huang.
Now on to other COVID-19 updates here. Health Minister Gan Kim Yong said life in Singapore will not revert to normal when the circuit breaker period ends on May 4th. Mr. Gan, who is also the co-chair of the multi-ministry task force, added that if necessary, the circuit breaker would be extended.
He stressed that even if the circuit breaker ends as scheduled on May 4th, Singaporeans will not see a situation where all stricter measures are lifted at once.
Meanwhile, in a Facebook post, Environment and Water Resources Minister Masagos Zulkifli said around 200 composition fines of $300 were issued to those who did not comply with the elevated safe distancing measures yesterday. Mr. Masagos added enforcement officers found people loitering, exercising together when they were not from the same household, and turning aggressive when asked to leave. He also called for the public to cooperate by staying home as far as possible. If you're still unclear about what you're allowed or not allowed to do under the new COVID-19 Temporary Measures Act, lawyer Justin Chan is here to provide some clarity. Now, he's the senior partner and head of dispute resolution practice at Tito Isaac Co. Hi, Justin. Now, Justin, your firm sets aside 1 hour every Wednesday from 5 to 6 p.m. to answer legal questions from the general public. This to offer support to the community amid this pandemic. What are the top concerns you've received so far?
Well, I think we've received various concerns touching upon, I think, 3 general areas. I think one is family law, which is quite an interesting area, custody issues, mental capacity act issues, because those cover aged parents, for example, as well as business interruption issues. For example, in employment, retrenchment, if I'm unable to collect on a certain contract, what happens then? Those are the broad issues that we fielded so far.
Well, Justin, you mentioned, business concerns. So in his third budget speech, DPM Heng said firms in all sectors will have 75% of their local employees' wages subsidized for April. Last week, the Manpower Ministry said employers are strongly urged not to resort to retrenchment or prolonged no-pay leave to manage business costs. And in its third annual guidelines released last month, the National Wages Council also said retrenchments should be a last resort. But despite all these, there are those who have been let go from their jobs. So what legal recourse do they have?
Well, everything that has been issued so far are on a guideline basis. Those are not black letter law. So when you wish to insist on your strict legal rights, you've been retrenched in this day and age, then the recourse would have to be the contract, the employment contract, the primary document. For example, if there was a termination clause, what does the termination clause say? Were you supposed to have been given a notice period? And there are situations where, sadly enough, the COVID-19 situation could have been used as an excuse to terminate a person rather than it being a legitimate reason for termination. So when that happens, we go back to common law principles of unfair, wrongful dismissal and termination remedies.
Just moving away from the workers and an employer bit, the principle of the circuit breaker measures seems to be that people who live in different households shouldn't meet. In other words, stay at your registered address. But what about engaged couples who aren't cohabiting, or married couples waiting for their BTO flats, or even those who live with one set of parents and either the husband or wife hasn't updated the address yet? I mean, there are dozens of other examples, of course, but are these people breaking the law?
Well, again, we have to take guidance from our leaders on this issue because it's not just the black letter of the law, but the spirit of the law. And it appears that the question is not one of family closeness, but it's one of geographical separation. So if you are engaged, but you live in separate premises, then you shouldn't be. I think that is the spirit of the law, and that's what is being advised at the moment. Even in this difficult time, I mean, we can leverage on other means of communication. We have Zoom protocols, we have WhatsApp, we have Skype. Unfortunately, it's a situation where absence can make the heart grow fonder.
Oh, you mentioned, Justin, that family law is one of the top concerns that your firm receives. So we've also read accounts of divorced people whose ex-spouses are using these safe distancing measures to limit access to their children beyond what's agreed in the custodial arrangement. So what's your advice in that situation?
That is squarely what new regulations are meant to address. We've got we've got the COVID-19 Temporary Measures Act and the subsidiary legislation there too. The regulations were passed on 7 April 2020, but that didn't address the specific issue of custody laws. So but it is now addressed in the new section 4.3. So essentially what it means is that if you are leaving your residence in order to transfer custody of a child, you should be allowed to. So nobody should be able to, a divorced spouse should not be able to hide behind the COVID-19 situation and say, I can't transfer custody over to you. In line with that, the family justice courts have made it possible to make certain urgent applications to enforce access rights. So you have, I think that is the best route that can be taken at the moment. But before we even get to a litigious posture, perhaps some communication, some consensus and agreement can be reached between the spouse. You know, we are already facing pressures of economic, social nature. You know, can we arrive at a decision which is in the best interest of the child?
Justin, you know, having said all that, do you think then there's too much grey area in these circuit breaker measures? Would it be more, say, prudent to enforce a tighter lockdown, except for essential services, of course, like what other countries have done?
I think it would be difficult and slightly irresponsible of me to critique the present measures. What I can say is that as a lawyer, looking at the laws which change every single day, I mean, our lawmakers are in an unenviable position. If there are new laws being passed, I think we should do our best to abide by them. We've really come to a situation where we have to do what we can with what we have where we are.
Right, fantastic ending words there, Justin. Thank you so much for your time and for explaining the new laws. We've been speaking to Justin Chan, Senior Partner and Head of Dispute Resolution Practice at Tito Isaac Co. To support the community during this pandemic, the team there set aside 1 hour every Wednesday from 5 to 6 p.m. to answer legal questions from the public. It's by appointment, and you can register at titoisaaclaw.com.
Here's a quick update on what's happening around the world. US President Donald Trump announced the suspension of US funding to the World Health Organization. He said the WHO had failed in its basic duty and must be held accountable. It's a reflection of his belief that the organization has covered up the seriousness of the Covid-19 outbreak in China before it spread around the world. The US is the biggest overall donor to the WHO, having contributed more than $400 million last year. Elsewhere, the death toll in Sweden has passed 1,000. Although well below the rates of Italy and the UK, Sweden's mortality rate is now worse than other Nordic countries, almost 10 times higher compared to Finland, more than 4 times higher than in Norway. This adds to controversy surrounding Sweden's decision to adopt a hands-off model. Schools, bars, cafes and restaurants remain open to the public.
Now, it's no surprise that amid these unusual times, personal hygiene has come under increased scrutiny, with more emphasis on cleanliness. From the US to Singapore, anxious consumers are snapping up ultraviolet sanitizers, hoping to use UV light to kill germs.
But exactly how much germs are transferred onto your hands when you are in contact with commonly touched surfaces? The Straits Times finds out. Here's a quick look at the Great Germs Experiment.
For this experiment, we will need 3 people, optic solution, a UV light, and an ATP meter, a device that gives us a reading on how clean the surface are. The first person will coat both of his hands with optic solution. The optic solution represents any possible germs on his hands and is visible under the UV light. This person will walk into the office and start to touch the high-touch areas such as the doorknobs, the light switches, and go to his workstation and start using his computer. The other people will come into the office and touch the same high-touch surface area. We will use the UV light to find out how much optic solution has been transferred. We will also swab their hands and use the ATP meters to find out how clean their hands are. From this experiment, we can confirm that high-touch surfaces spread germs easily. Although these high-touch surfaces are something which we cannot avoid daily, but from today's experiment, washing our hands properly will make a huge difference.
Wow, watching the video really certainly makes me feel very icky now, touching my iPad. But in any case, really to tell us how effective are UV sanitizers in getting rid of germs, we have Deputy Tech Editor Trevor Tan with us. Hi, Trevor. Now, Trevor, let's
Hi.
get straight to it. Do UV sanitizers work?
Well, as with all things, I think the experts I've talked to have said that nobody knows whether it will be able to kill the coronavirus because it's so new, but because of the structure of the coronavirus, it's quite similar to previous, like most viruses and germs. UV sanitizers should be able to work, but again, they emphasize that no test has been done, so they can't confirm, but it's as good as washing your hands. We don't know whether washing our hands will be really able to eradicate all germs, but we're still washing hands anyway, right?
Trevor, what's the draw of this gadget that really looks like a pencil case? What would constitute a good UV sanitizer?
Well, actually, it's kind of difficult to like quantify how it is a good UV sanitizers because there are a lot of no brands out there. The ones that I have reviewed has been tested by independent third-party laboratories. So that's why I have more confidence in reviewing them. But the important thing is all these UV sanitizers must be using UV lights to efficiently kill all the germs, or 99.9%, as they always like to say, because there's always a 0.1% that you don't know what is it.
Right.
But the most important thing is must remember is UV light is very harmful to the body. So whenever you're using it, close it and make sure that you doesn't like expose yourself to the UV light. And I think the biggest draw is for consumer is you no longer need to wipe it, and wiping your smartphones and gadgets with wet wipes is not exactly the most safe thing, It might damage your expensive smartphone and tablets. And all you need is just this. Okay, this is not powered, because I don't have any wire that long enough to power this, but all you need, you see this tool is a UV light. Just put your smartphone inside, close, press this button, and after 18 minutes, for this model, it's 18 minutes or 30 minutes. Some models do it faster at 10 minutes. It depends on how much UV light there are inside. So that's the thing. So after that, after a while, just come back and then you can open up and start using it again. And some of them have this aroma therapy thing. So it's inlet, you can put some perfume inside so your gadget can smell nice after that.
Trevor, apart from, like you say, UV lights are harmful to the body, right? But you wrote an article saying that these UV sanitizers are selling like hotcakes. Apart from its main use, which is of course presumably to kill germs with UV light, what other features do users look out for in this gadget?
Mostly, like this particular model, it has a wireless charger.
Okay.
So you can just put in, even if you're not sanitizing your gadgets, you can use it as to charge your smartphones for smartphones that support wireless charging. And if it's big enough, you can actually sanitize your glasses, basically anything with a hard surface. Because I think for masks, it might not be effective because masks have porous surfaces, so things might get through and things might not be killed. The germs might not be killed. Yeah.
Trevor, you have another story out, how to unlock your iPhone with Face ID while still wearing a mask. This is especially useful now that it's mandatory to wear a mask when you're out. So what is the trick here? How is that possible? Do you actually have to rescan your face first?
Yes, definitely. Because when you first do it, your Face ID works by recognizing your mouth, nose, and eyes. So when you want to redo it, you have to reset everything. So you have to go to settings, reset. You can try using the alternate appearance. Not in this phone right now, but once you do that, if it's not effective, then you have to reset the Face ID again and start from square one. It's a very tiring process, and a lot of times it might not work at all, even if you are successful in the first place. After 6 tries, I make it successful, I change a mask, it might not work again because it all depends on how you wear your mask.
Right.
Sometimes when you wear your mask too high, when you cover the whole of your nose, and then they will stop recognizing, and my Face ID will stop recognizing you again.
Right. Trevor, could you probably just show us if it works for you? Because you've scanned your phone with your mask on, right?
Yeah. Okay, let me put on this government issue mask. I hope it works.
That's true. So you cannot wear it too high up on your face, right? Or rather, the same height as when you actually scanned your face.
When you scan your face, you're doing it halfway. So let me demonstrate how you should scan it.
Yeah.
So when you scan it right, try, and then you do this. Then you do rotate your head, cover.
Right.
The first scan done.
Right.
So next one. Cover your nose, and then rotate your head again.
Yeah.
And make sure the second scan is done. And even then, right, it might not work. Then you can set up the alternate appearance, repeating the same steps again. And even after that, it might not work.
And I guess we have no choice but to either take off the mask or use our 6-digit PIN to unlock the phone. There's always a way around it, I guess.
Yeah, that's why my wife said, why bother such steps? You can just use your passcode.
Right. Okay, so we're going to see if Trevor is successful in unlocking his phone with his mask on. Oh, he did it!
Hey! On the first try, that's fantastic.
For the first try, yeah, exactly. Now, for those of you, of course, watching us at home, you can try the tips that Trevor has shared with us. Well, thank you so much, Trevor, for speaking to us. That was the Straits Times Deputy Tech Editor, Trevor Tan.
Earlier in the week, we had local singer-songwriter Clement Chow on the show. He spoke about remaking his National Day classic, Count on Me Singapore, into something for these times. The new song is called Stay at Home Singapore.
This remake was done with other local artists and the Straits Times, all for charity. Your donations will go to support the ST School Pocket Money Fund and the Business Times Budding Artists Fund.
Go to the link below to donate. It's also in the description if you're watching us on YouTube. While other Singaporeans are using music to bring people together, like this 900-strong virtual choir singing Home by Dick Lee. Have a listen.
Once again, I'm Haryanto Diman with Olivia Quay. Join us tomorrow for more stories on A Big Story.